everybody. So today we're going to do soups, and you're probably thinking soup in spring, it feels like it's getting hot, but all of these soups are using baby vegetables, very simple, and it's a great way to pack nutrients into something small. So these are soups that would be great as a starter. They're great hot, they're great cold, great for lunch, that kind of thing. The interesting thing is very popular in France to have pureed vegetables as a side dish or as a soup, because it's almost like the vegetables have been chewed for you already. So all you're doing is getting that immediate burst of flavor on your tongue. So they're really delicious. They bring out the sweetness of the vegetables. So the first one we're going to do is a carrot soup with coconut, a little bit of coconut, ginger, and lime. So I'm just going to put the coconut oil in here rather than butter. Okay, get this out of the way. And then I've got everything chopped up already, because I've done a lot of sort of showing you how to, chop garlic and chop onions and things like that. So I thought we'd skip all that and just make a lot of soups. So I have my stove's already on. The coconut oil is melting, and in here I have minced fresh ginger and also garlic. So I'm going to add that, and we're just going to let it saute. This is the kind of thing, this is going to go really quickly, so I'm not going to walk away. I'm not going to answer the phone. I don't want this to brown at all. And if you haven't used fresh ginger, I have a little piece that's left here. And you simply need to peel it. A smaller knife would probably be better. But anyway, just peel it, slice it, chop it like you would the garlic. So very simple. Actually, I'll put it in here. Okay, so I'm going to get this going, and then I've got all the baby carrots from the farmer's market. If you can go to the farmer's market and get baby carrots, they're super sweet. If you can just get to the grocery store, just get the regular carrots. It's okay, organic hopefully. And then, so once this starts to sizzle, and can you smell it? So smells really good. So I'm going to really keep an eye on it. I don't want it to get brown, because then it'll add a bitter flavor. And this is a very sweet, simple soup. So I'm going to add an onion, already cut up, and then we're just going to let that cook for a while. Okay? So that's going to take a while. I want to get some of the moisture out of the onion and just start to soften it. Now for this soup, to the right, I am going to do a pea soup. So I'm trying to squish in here so we don't have to move the camera a lot, but I'm just going to show you what I've got. So here I've got some onion. For this soup, I'm going to use butter. I don't want the flavor of coconut oil. This is going to be a little more subtle. And then I got these beautiful fresh peas from the farmer's market. Now you could also use frozen peas. That would be just fine. And then we're going to add fresh mint. And then here is my creme fraiche that I made with the cream and yogurt. It's been sitting out and starting to get thick. So I am going to add butter to this pan and let that melt, and then I'm going to add the onions. So this is just layering and setting up the flavors, okay? Now, one reason I really like to do these pureed soups, let's see how this is going. I can add that. One reason I really like to do these pureed soups is this is a great way to add chicken broth or bone broth. You could use veal broth, but we made the chicken, and I've had this out of the fridge a little bit just to let it warm up a bit, but it's still gelatinous. And so we're going to use that. So this is a great way to use the broth. In the winter, a nice warm cup of broth with a little ginger or turmeric, or just, just instead of maybe having tea in the afternoon is great. But as the weather starts to warm, it's a little bit harder to do that. So this is a really nice way to really use your broth and get all those nutrients and the gelatin. Okay, so this is starting to soften up. How's this guy doing? He's a little behind. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to add the carrots. And I'm going to add the broth. I'm almost done with the soup. So this is going to take probably about 10 minutes to get the carrots cooked all the way. And at this point, we can just put the lid on and let it cook. So what I shall do is switch these guys. Let this go over here. All right, so this I'm going to let cook a little bit longer. And to that, I am going to add the peas. Am I missing anything? No, okay. I'm going to add the peas, and then I'm going to add some fresh mint. So I'll add about a 1/4 cup of mint, maybe a little less. And mint, you don't really want to chop ahead because it will start to oxidize and turn brown. I have a little more here. Okay, so I'm just going to chop this up into little slivers. This is really good cold, this one. Okay. So as soon as the onions are soft, not quite there, just about. Okay, we're going to add the peas. I already washed them. They're clean. I think I'll save some out so we can just snack on them because they're really good raw. Okay, so we're going to add that. And then we need a little more. It's going to be too much onion. Okay. Look. A little more. Okay. And I'm going to add the mint. Now, here's the difference between these two soups. This one I am not going to put a lid on because any green vegetable, like broccoli, green beans, anything like that, if you put a lid on while you're cooking them, they'll oxidize and then they'll turn sort of a, yellowy green color. We want this to be nice, bright, and green. So I'm just going to leave the lid off. Doesn't affect the carrots, so we can put the lid on to get it going. So we're going to add the broth. Okay, it's doing that because it's really gelatinous, so it's like little pieces of jello are coming out. Okay, done. Put that back here. Okay, you're going to have to follow me on 3 different recipes all at once, okay? Let's get that going. Actually, yeah, there we go. I think I'll do this last. I'm switching. Now, the next one we are going to do is Vietnamese pho. And this can be done with leftover chicken. You can use leftover steak as long as it's pretty rare. You can do it vegetarian. You could use a firm tofu with it. I'm going to move this. Let's put it here. Okay. Okay, gotta clean my station up. All right, so here is my little setup for my pho. And the way I do the pho, you can make a Vietnamese chicken broth. You would roast ginger. I've given you the recipe. You would roast ginger and do the broth so that it had that Vietnamese flavor. They tend to add a little bit of like brown sugar, something that's a little bit sweet. I do a cheater version because when I make my chicken broth, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I don't know if I feel like having pho. I love it, but I like to just make the basic broth and freeze it and decide later what I wanna do. So what I do is if I have the oven on, I cut a piece of ginger in half. Now I just did a couple cups of broth, but you know, if you did a big pot, you would want to do a bigger piece. So I cut the ginger and I roasted it in the oven until it was soft. This will keep it from being super, super spicy. If you just add a bunch of fresh ginger to it, it'll just be really, really spicy. Okay, so and then what I did was I simmered the roasted ginger in the broth. I also added some shiitake mushrooms, and mushrooms, especially in the Asian culture, are used for so many things because they have so many healing properties. Different mushrooms have different properties to them that are good for you. So these are baby shiitakes, and hang on. So these were from the farmer's market from Far West Fungi, which is a company in Santa Cruz, and you can order their things online. They also sell dried mushrooms, so I could have used this as well, but this just happened to be at the farmer's market. And I love these little baby shiitake. Okay, so we're just gonna put the soup together. Here's some of the mushrooms, okay? So I have, traditionally you would use like cellophane or rice noodles. I happen to really like Japanese soba noodles, so these are not Vietnamese at all, but they're delicious. And they're made with buckwheat, which is gluten-free, and these have some wheat, so it's whole wheat and buckwheat. So really good for you, they're organic, and I like to use these. So the noodles are pre-cooked. Just boil in water, follow the directions, cool them off with cold water, and we're just gonna build the soup. So as soon as this is hot, which I think it is now, I'm gonna add it to the broth. So here I have some leftover chicken breast. Like I said, you could use meat, you could beef, you could use pork, you could use tofu, you could do it vegetarian and add some vegetables. And then I have some cilantro. I have some beautiful Thai basil. This is purple basil. If you can't find it, just use regular basil. Okay, just use regular basil, and then you could also make some Italian pesto, so you're kind of going all over the globe. This smells really, really good. So we could leave the leaves whole, we could chop them. I think I'm gonna just chop them a little bit, like that. So this is kind of fun, I think, especially with kids, or just even if you're entertaining. This is a great thing to do, entertaining, because you can put all the little bowls out and let everybody make their own, which is kind of fun. And everything can be done ahead. The only thing that has to be done at dinner is you have to heat up the broth. That's it. So I'm gonna add some green onion. Okay, fresh green onion. I have some jalapeno slices, so I like it kind of spicy. And then I will add the broth. I like a lot of mushrooms. This is nice and hot, and this will heat everything up. It smells, can you smell it? It smells really good. Now, the condiment that you would serve with this would traditionally be fish sauce, which is another fermented food, actually. And I don't have any right now. So I do have coconut aminos, a little bit like soy sauce. So we can add a little dash to that. It'll give it a nice color. Whoops. I'll clean that up in a minute. And then I have sprouts, bean sprouts. I have the herbs, those kind of all over. I have lime, which is yummy with it. And then I have, traditionally it would be crispy shallots, but I also cheat and use crispy onions from Whole Foods, which are the only ones that I've found that are non-GMO, and they don't have any chemicals and flours and preservatives, anything like that. So these are, you know, pretty nice. If you have to have that Thanksgiving green bean casserole, this is the way to go. Okay, so here's the pho. You just need some chopsticks. Can you see it? Super good. This is what we're having for dinner. All right, I'm gonna get this out of the way. We'll go on to the next soup. And where's the cloth? Here we go. Okay. So we're going to check the peas. They just need to be cooked. Not quite. And the carrots. We're going to check those, and that I can do with a knife because, okay, so these are nice and soft. Yeah, not quite. We'll give it another one. Let me add a little more of that. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of cilantro just to give it another dimension, another layer of flavor. You know, in the Asian culture, soups are traditionally served for breakfast, and they're so healing. So that's, I think, a great tradition. Okay, so we've got no. Ouch. It's hot. Okay, we're gonna let these soups simmer. I don't want to rush them. So, since we're using my chicken broth and you've gone to all this trouble to make broth, we want to use it in as many places as we can. So, we're just going to do a quick sauce. In French cuisine, everything has a name, like in ballet, so that the chef can basically yell at you and just say, make a bechamel, and you know what to do. He doesn't have to say, get 1 tablespoon of this and 1 tablespoon of that, etc. So we are going to make a sauce, and this is a velouté. So a bechamel sauce is a very simple sauce made with milk and or cream. So it's a white sauce. A velouté sauce is the very same sauce, but it's made with chicken broth. So I have butter, I have flour. I have not tried it with gluten-free flour, I have to admit. So if I do 1 tablespoon of butter, 1 tablespoon of flour, and 1 cup of milk or stock, I will get a nice thin creamy sauce. You could use it, for example, you could add it to soup and make like a cream of mushroom soup or a cream of broccoli soup. You could use it to pour over fish. I gotta get this right here. There we go. You could use it for anything that you could add cheese to it and make a cheese sauce, okay? So it's 1 tablespoon of butter, 1 tablespoon of flour, 1 cup of milk or chicken broth, Now, if you want a thicker sauce, let's say you want to add vegetables and you want to bake it in a like an au gratin dish, like scalloped potatoes, for example, you would use 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of flour, and still use 1 cup of stock. All this is in your recipes. So the butter is melted. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of flour. And we're just going to stir this until it is bubbling. What we want to do is cook the flour just enough so that it doesn't taste like flour. Okay, actually I didn't really measure my butter, so I'm going to add a little more flour. This is important now. Okay, so that's going to cook for a minute. Now, ideally what I would do is I would have my broth would already be hot, but I had too many pans going here, so it's been sitting here. So I have 1 cup of chicken broth. We're going to add a little bit of salt. So I need a little more flour. So not sure if you can see this, but it's turned into a paste. If it looks really oily, I don't know, can you see that in the thing? Yeah? Okay. So if it looks really oily, it means you need a little bit more flour. You don't want it to look oily. So after about a minute or 2 of cooking that, let's add a tiny bit more flour. I am going to add my broth. Now, if my broth was hot, this sauce would be done in just a minute. But since it's not, it's going to take a little bit of time for the broth to heat up. So I add about half of it, a third of it. I whisk it, and I'll let it come to a boil. And this will make sure that there won't be any lumps. And then once that happens, I can go ahead and add the rest. Okay? So we're going to get everything out of the way. This is starting to boil, so I gotta really whisk it. Okay, my pea soup is done. I'm gonna add some cream. You see how thick that is? Kind of gloppy almost. Okay, do that. And we're just gonna finish this soup up. Okay, now this is really thick. It's almost like a paste, kind of a gloppy paste, but it's nice and smooth. I'll add the rest of the broth. And this sauce is done. We just have to let it come to the boil, let it simmer for a few minutes, and flavor it. Make sure it's all the lumps are gone. You want to push your whisk into the corner of the pan. And then the only seasoning this gets is white pepper. You can use the already ground white pepper. I'm pointing to my spice jar. So white pepper, because I don't want it to have little black specks in it. And salt. And optional is a little bit of nutmeg. So you can use the already ground nutmeg, or you can use this nutmeg. And that is that. So we'll talk a little bit more about this in the actual class. So I'm going to switch these. Turn that way down. Okay, this is done. You can either puree this in a blender, and just a word of warning, you want to remember to, if you're using a blender, that little lid, center lid, you want to take that off and just use a towel to cover it, or sort of tilt the lid so that air can get in. If you don't, it will explode because of the steam. So you have to have air coming in and going out. But we're going to use this hand immersion blender because it just means I don't have to get anything else dirty. Well, maybe it'll take too long. I should do the blender. There we go. Now, if I was working in a French restaurant, you would have to put this through a sieve so that it would be perfectly smooth, but we're not going to do that. Okay, I'm going to add a little salt. I'm going to taste it, see if it needs anything. It's perfect. So we will just pour this in. It's going to be a beautiful green color. I don't want it to splatter. And like I said, this can be served hot. It can be chilled. We could put a little mint on it. We can also top it with a little bit of slivered peas. Okay, now we're just getting fancy, okay? We're just showing off. A little bit of mint, so there we go. So that's one. And then our second one is going to be the carrot. So, this. Okay, so this is done. Okay. Now, to this one, last thing we're going to add is miso. So we're going to add white miso, which is the fermented soy. And I need a clean spoon for this. This adds a really wonderful flavor, plus it adds that probiotic kick that we're looking for. So I'm just going to add that. We're going to pretend that I washed the blender. And then this will be done. If I could sing, I would, but you don't want me to sing. Okay, I'm just going to show you this. This is perfect now. It's like a nice, creamy, rich sauce. So, turn off the heat. That's ready. Now, if it gets too thick, you could always add a little more chicken broth. You could add coconut milk. That would be good too. I need a little broth. Okay, so for the sake of not having you wait for me to do this, I am going to serve it chunky. Okay, so we're going to get all this out of the way. Okay, and I've got my bowl here. Okay, through the magic of television, this is now completely pureed. This stuff is kind of psychedelic. I love the color. And then what I like to do is just squeeze it with a little bit of lemon, like so. The miso is salty, so there should be enough salt in here. And then I have some toasted black and white sesame seeds, put that at the top, and this is done. So we've got our carrot soup, our mint, and our pho right here. So super quick soups, 3 different soups, nutritious, easy, great for dinner, great as a first course, and you gotta try them out. It's really good. Okay.